listen to a steam locomotive. People listen and say, we must keep that sound alive. Why? Could have to do with childhood.
I would have been 5 or 6 years old then. My brother's a year younger than I am.
It was 1954 or 55. Jim Vanderbeck's father wanted his boys to remember steam.
We spent our vacations when I was 5 and 6 in such beautiful places like Oak Ridge, Oregon and Auburn, Washington.
Taking pictures. 45 years later, Bob and Jim work on a steam locomotive, the 700.
All the hours I spend in the firebox and in the smoke box and getting dirty. When you take it out and run it and see that thing move, it does something to you, and it makes it all worthwhile.
They are making tracks in time. For Mike Prager, the restored Spokane, Portland, and Seattle 700 is a meeting with his father.
His favorite engine was the 700, and he clearly loved this machine. It's a thing of beauty, it really is.
Mike's father, Ken, worked as fireman, then engineer for the SP&S.
He was drawn to the railroads. There was a passion there. There was a love for the machine and for the road that made his heart soar. I know that. And he may never have put that in those terms, but you could hear it in his voice when he talked.
Jim Abney knows that feeling. He inherited it from his father, along with a clipboard.
That on the back is my father's initials that he carved into it, G.E. Abney. And this is the same clipboard that he used when he was running this locomotive in the 1950s. The very same locomotive. This clipboard hung on this locomotive with orders in the 1950s.
Through the years, the Pragers and the Abneys crossed paths.
Your grandfather, Nicholas, was a locomotive engineer for Spokane, Portland, Seattle. And my father, Gilbert Abney, fired steam locomotives for him. And then your father, Kenny Prager, fired steam locomotives for my father, Gilbert. As a fireman for the Spokane, Portland, Seattle Railroad in the 1960s, I fired steam locomotives for your father, Kenny.
Shared memories in a changing world. Home to a lot of railroaders through the years, it's changed. Talk to some of the fellows who worked here at Brooklyn Yard. This is how it looked 50 years ago.
This was the back shop where they could put probably 4 engines in a row, and then they totally rebuilt them in there.
Okay, here we come.
Irv Schwieger worked for Southern Pacific and Union Pacific 48 years.
Between here and the first track, and then the distance between the second track, and that's where the old roundhouse was. And it went right on around, and it was round on the outside.
My name is Henry Bars, and I used to work in this roundhouse in 1941 when I got out of high school. And this, of course, in those days we had a nice big back shop to work, and the big roundhouse was still here.
Then stick in there and you dog your material down, then you work on it with a sledgehammer.
Merlin Trotska worked in the blacksmith shop.
And Right about there where these cars are. I don't remember that track being in there. And the powerhouse was right here too.
It was a hustle, bustle, busy place then. One generation of railroader led to the next.
What's your working pressure on here?
260 on this one.
260. So then,
Charlie Porter came here in 1928.
my grandfather was a pipe fitter, sheet metal man for the railroad, and he said, "You got to learn a trade. You got to learn a trade." So across the street from me was a blacksmith that worked for Southern Pacific, and he says, "Come on down, and I'll introduce you to the boiler foreman." So I was about, let's see, 1928 when I started, so I must have been 21 when I started my apprenticeship.
Charlie Porter became a boiler maker. Henry Barr is a pipe fitter.
My dad worked for the railroad. He was a locomotive painter here at Brooklyn. So when I got out of high school, they offered me a job here, and so I served my apprenticeship time.
And there was a conrod that went over the first driver, and that had an offset in it.
Blacksmith Merlin Trotska learned his craft in a North Dakota agricultural college.
But I only shoot one horse. I figured that wasn't for me. I like the big old iron horses better.
Another engineer that was very much low bubble of glass in the sight glass. He wanted dry steam. So much better.
Irv Schwieger became a fireman, then an engineer. He remembers what was here.
There was the sand house was to the left of where the engines are.
And what is that?
That's where they had to put sand. They would bring gondolas of sand in, dry it, and that is what you use to help you stop a train.
Nearby, a water tower to fill the tenders. The other side of the old roundhouse, the garden, where engines ready for the road waited.
They'd leave them there. Of course, somebody was always making sure they had enough steam so that it could start up again. But it was just a place to store them because the roundhouse was for mostly repairs. They had steam on them at all times.
A turntable moved locomotives in and out of the bays. A small turntable first, replaced with a larger one. Organized to the second. Only out of service 1 hour, 48 minutes during the change. Charlie Porter learned there were rules about turntables.
I was on one side of the circle and I wanted to go to the other. So I got on the turntable and ran it around, and the boss happened to see me. And he said, "Damn it, Charlie," he said, "that's violating safety." I said, "Why?" He said, "You're not supposed to ride on there." He said, "The operator gets on there when an engine is on the turntable." Well, I just was saving a few steps. Well, don't do it anymore. And he was really chewing on me because he didn't like me to do that.
Some things are easy to remember even a half-century later.
So one pipe there, just held up the pipe here so I could tighten the ring here, you know?
Yeah.
Those pipes are long and heavy,
certainly.
one on each side. And when he got it done, he couldn't get his head out because there's a pipe behind it here. So he had to loosen it again so he could get his head out and then tighten it up again. I'll never forget that story. That was such a fun thing. After everybody kidded him so much.
Mm-hmm. Got caught right in with the pipe.
Yeah, just, you never just
Sure,
pull the
don't
pipe
think
up
about
behind it. Yeah, pipe behind it.
That's funny.
It is funny.
Hey, I wish you guys keep the noise down. I'm sensitive.
Railroading was a noisy business.
You could get earplugs, but in those days, earplugs, well, you were kind of a sissy if you used earplugs, But you get inside one of those and start putting an air gun going, it makes quite a bit of racket.
A welding job on an engine would take probably 2-3 days. And you'd work 16 hours, go home and sleep 8, and then go back and work another 16. So it was a pretty rough job. Sometimes we didn't have enough welders in the blacksmith department.
A fireman on a steam locomotive had a lot of things to worry about.
You had to put the back of your hand on the tank to see the temperature of the oil.
Really?
Because if it got too cold, it wouldn't flow properly. If it got too hot, it had air pockets and would thunder, and you wouldn't get the power. So you always touch the back of your hand because it was more sensitive to the temperature of the tank.
I was working one day and some engineer came in off a freight run, and for some reason he didn't drain the steam chest, and this main rod was bowed. That, can you imagine that steel? It had a bow in it where he didn't blow out the cylinders or something, and it just, it's unbelievable you could blow something like that, you know? Well, look at that steel there. And this piece here was just bowed. Never forget it.
If the engine was sluggish and blowing a lot of smoke, then you would scoop sand and slowly let it go through and it would clean out the fluids. But you do that on a Monday morning when all the ladies had their laundry out, they didn't like you. But a lot of times on an engine that was hard to fire, you put the whole box through it by the time you got to your gene.
It was a cold day, and the water was cold. So bingo, I was in there hammering on the ends of those bolts I showed you, and bingo, got a tremendous noise. And what happened? The boiler cracked. Well, it made a Y, it started there, and it went the full length of the barrel, and then came down the throat sheet. And boy, I was out of that fire door pretty fast. It scared the daylights out of me.
I remember the first diesel they brought in here. They come to work one morning and it was sticking out of the roundhouse. What in the hell is that? And we looked at it and we said, it'll never work.
It did. Those here in 1955 remember a day in October. Lots of news media coverage. Roundhouse foreman Ed Moss brought a son to sit in the cab. He remembers.
This is October 5th, 1955. The 5021, the last road locomotive to leave Brooklyn. They had it kind of painted up and polished up to look pretty nice for the occasion.
Steam Power's day was over.
That's A.B. Clancy. He was the engineer on this trip. I believe his fireman's name was E.E. Schwieger.
A young Irv Schwieger didn't get his photograph taken for a simple reason.
I was on the opposite side, so.
Here we go. Black smoke out of the stack and white steam out of the safety valve.
A common sight about to disappear.
I rode with him to Oregon City. My wife was taking pictures and forgot to adjust the lens in the camera, so we have a good twilight picture here.
A symbolic picture. The sound still rings in people's ears.
People say it chugs, but the correct term is chuffs. It chuffs 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. And slight pause on this gap, and then 4 times. So you hear chug, 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 chug. It doesn't go continuously even. You listen to it next time.
Amazingly, there is a next time. Over the years, the city of Portland acquired several locomotives, SP 44, 49, arriving in 1958. Ed Moss.
I was there when they put the engine in there, and I was there again when they took it out, about 16 years later.
Restored to pull the Freedom Train on the western part of its bicentennial tour, volunteers keep it operational. There still are steam locomotives in the Brooklyn Roundhouse, Southern Pacific 4449, the SPNS 700, and ORNN 197. Gifts to the city of Portland, preserved through the labor of volunteers. How much labor? How many volunteers? seen in the retubing of the 700 during the spring and summer of the year 2000. How important are volunteers? Doyle McCormick of 4449.
Do you think one man could take care of one of those engines? No. Volunteers are the core of these organizations. Without them, we'd be dead in the water.
Work on this stuff out here with the big one.
Walt Eisenman keeps tabs on all the volunteer work for the 700.
Volunteers are very important in this type of an organization. Without it, this engine would still be sitting and rusting in the park. The entire survival of this engine and engines like it depend on volunteers.
Old-timers would call this the 5-year inspection. Outside and in.
On the inside of the border is the water, and water has all kinds of chemicals just naturally in the water, and it can corrode inside.
Out with the old tubes, then out with the remains in the tube sheet. It is noisy, it is dirty. It is what Charlie Porter experienced in the 1930s as Boilermaker, because water,
Over time, eats some of the metal away.
hands-on work, mind wishing there were some easier way. This is a locomotive built by Baldwin in 1938. Retired in the 50s, brought back to life in the 90s. This is the test of romance of steam.
Even though we put a water treatment with it, this is to test these sheets to make sure that they have good strength to them and they're as thick as what they should be. 592, 598 at 20.
New devices to use on old machines, ultrasound.
Yeah, there was just 16 right there.
602?
Yeah.
The old-fashioned way of getting nut off bolt.
Go ahead.
Yeah, there's even woodworking on a steam engine. You wouldn't think it. I think it's all steel. There's a lot of wood. Windows. Seats. A lot of 1938 crap.
Flush the water system, pull out the debris.
Mother load. Okay. Mother load. Mother load.
Next up, the tubes or flues. Fine-tuning the equipment. Heat the end of the pipe. Make a test run. Set to work. one of many.
Are you back on the job?
I don't know if this thing is going to fall apart.
It's older than you are. It's got a right to.
Old equipment does occasionally cause problems.
Okay, which one? On the other side. Yeah, I see that. Question is, where'd it come from? Don't see anything there missing.
That one's on.
Okay. Another selection. Give it a little toasting on the back side. You're supposed to do that railroad style.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to remember that.
Yeah.
244 pipes, heated, tapered, set aside.
Lift and separate. What, your shoulder?
244 pipes to be trimmed. Ends to be cleaned. A map to be studied that all might be in order when the tubes or flues are set in place. Not everything goes smoothly.
Okay, we're gonna have to do some creativeness here, yeah.
Let me get it going here. I got it.
Okay.
Easy, noisy.
Are we going to have a big celebration? Did you bring the barbecue? No.
Notice, please, Linda Vanderbeck always seems to be present.
Either I join in and be involved or I'll never see him, so I thought, okay, what the heck.
Yay! Woohoo! Okay, Jim, set him.
A little farther.
The him is Jim Vanderbeck.
That's good.
It is such a part of their lives, they got married outside the roundhouse.
We had a reception in the passenger car and the wedding out front of the engine. It was steamed up sitting outside.
Blow the whistle after it's over with.
Really?
Uh-huh. And we ran it back and forth. I'm in my wedding dress running it back and forth.
Tubes to be rolled. Tubes and flues then seated. Through them will pass the hot exhaust gases. Then come superheaters.
Okay, hold it. Oh,
Flues carry the hot exhaust gases.
now it's all muscle.
Superheaters go in the flues to capture that heat.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep. Another 4 inches. There you go. That's close. You can hammer it in from there. Loosen it just a hair. Okay, try it. Take it up. Yeah, take it up a little.
Everything must be tightened. Finally, time to start a fire. Once it was so common, no one gave a second thought to a steam engine waiting in a rail yard. Time changes attitudes. Years ago, a father told his son, "Watch and remember. Steam engines will be replaced." No, thought the son, it will not happen, ever. Nothing stays the same. We treat the travels of a steam locomotive as another generation greeted automobiles and biplanes. When a steam train roars across the countryside now, we look, we listen. We feel what our parents and grandparents felt: amazement.
That'll be good anytime, 4449.
A steam locomotive is a powerful piece of machinery. You can sense it. But at Crescent Lake, approaching the Cascade Mountains, they stop for helpers, 2 diesels. They do not need the power. There are snow sheds and tunnels ahead. When all trains were powered by steam, tunnels had vent ports. They have been closed. It is more comfortable this way. From Oak Ridge on, it is steam once more, strictly steam, pulling them home, down from the mountains. Down to the valleys, down along the rivers below. Along the way, photographers wait. On occasion, passengers wait too, dropped off for a photo opportunity. Wherever a steam train travels, people follow, saying, "I may never see it again. I want to remember." Railroads always have followed rivers. Once upon a time, along the Hudson and the Ohio, Missouri and the Mississippi, along the Columbia and countless other rivers too, steam locomotives moved the people and the packages of a nation. Most people never turn their heads. We do. Now. Gladly. Years ago, Ed Moss worked for Southern Pacific.
Doggone, I can't do anything anymore.
But look what he did in his spare time many years ago. This is
An Atlantic.
an Atlantic. Okay.
442.
Meaning?
442. That was an Atlantic type.
A live steam working model 1-inch scale. He ran it in his backyard.
We didn't have many of those up here. But then if it was a 462, then it was a Pacific. We had lots of those.
He remembers these things because he was a foreman at the old Brooklyn Yard roundhouse. This is the way he remembers it. We can see what he saw in his years because of another hobby of his. Ed Moss took 8mm movies of railroading when steam was still the way, caught glimpses of people at work.
Those are some pictures around Brooklyn Roundhouse, mostly of personnel.
The people who kept the trains running.
Crew dispatcher Joe Schmidt, various people coming to work in the morning. And when you turn the camera on, people seem to get silly some way.
Ed Moss gives us glimpses not of a company, not of an industry, but of the people who gave life to a railroad, prepared the engines, threw their bags into the cab, and climbed in after them. We meet them thanks to Ed.
Engineer W. Bill Hyde, Fireman Clinkworth.
Shows us what life was like for the hostler and the occasional event.
This was number 18 came in, hit a cement truck at Salem. A Union Pacific engine at Brooklyn getaway track. During the war, they leased some Union Pacific engines to augment the SP.
Sometimes Ed caught rides along the main line.
Going through Brooklyn, telegraph office on the left. Willsburg Junction. Somebody coming off the branch. Clackamas River. The Cascade, train number 12. Going through Salem down the city street. Yeah, this is engineer Oscar Burgoyne. Speedometer shows we're going 79 miles an hour, which was the maximum allowable speed when train control was not used.
And finally, Eugene. Ed's film shows the people he knew reacting the way people always react, with grins, goofiness, waves of recognition. He shows us that side, then gives us a chance to ride a steam logging train.
This is the trip I took on the Oregon American Lumber Company. They went from Vernonia to Kesey, and then from Kesey they crossed the Sunset Highway and went up into the hills about 5 miles. And that's where I went in the morning, and then got on the engine and went up to where they were loading logs. This engine was a Shea engine built by Willamette in Portland, about 1923 or 4. And the guy that was running it ran it most of its life, and he kept it just shined up like you wouldn't believe. Other logging engines didn't look like that. I walked from here farther on in quite a distance where they were laying new track yet. There's a work train back here working, laying track and ties. And this was about 1957, and they told me in 2 years they would be out of there completely. And I think, as far as I know, they were. That was it.
Ed and his camera got around.
Now we're up at Timber in 1946, Timber, Oregon, Southern Pacific Helper Station on the Tillamook branch. Had a 3-stall roundhouse there. Used to use around 10 helper engines there. 687, that's a morning train leaving Timber up to Cochrane. The helpers will be cut off at Cochrane, and they'll go on down the other side to Wheeler. This train is headed for Hillsboro, Brooklyn.
Ed went, well, everywhere.
Mount Hood Railroad, when they still had steam, they're switching at Hood River.
He recorded the passing of steam across the Cascades.
We met several freight trains and several sets of helpers coming back down. Lots of brake shoe smoke.
But the scenes closer to home are the treasures. A moment in time.
That was W.O. Brown, the master mechanic who had been promoted and was leaving. They had a kind of a retirement for him.
A steam locomotive clears its throat. Goes to work. $50 ago, steam locomotives were everywhere. Pulled freight, passengers, swept across the countryside. Technology changed. Steam locomotives disappeared. Years later, they reappear occasionally. Because people who watched them as children want to see them again. Spokane, Portland, and Seattle's 700 came to life in 1938, is still alive thanks to its friends. Friends who brought it back to life. Keep it alive. For railroad engineer Jim Abney, the 700 is a link to his father.
My father ran this locomotive many thousands of miles in freight service, so it's a real pleasure for me to be running it today. I'm a third generation Spokane, Portland, Seattle employee.
Railroading was and is a way of life. It is for those who gather along the tracks. It is for those who help the 700 stay alive. Owned by the citizens of Portland, now in the care of the Pacific Railroad Preservation Association, the 700 sat idle in Oaks Park for 30 years.
And now we go under the highway. We used to go over the top of it on a big S-curve trestle.
6 years volunteers labored until in 1990 it moved under its own power. Occasionally now, volunteers take it out to the country, excursions, with photo ops. Tunnels to visit. Trestles to cross.
Like a kid in a candy store. If I had my druthers, I'd have this engine on the front of every Amtrak train I run.
Some people would like that.
The goal is to, somewhere here in the city of Portland, find a permanent home that is, better than this building, or at least as good as this building, and a place where we can know that the engines will be secure for future generations. We're all working towards that.
I'd like to turn around and see this engine, when it can no longer run, become part of a display in a steam industries museum, a regional industries museum that talks about the history of the area and how it developed because of steam.
That's our prime concern, is finding a permanent location where we can maintain them and keep them out of the weather, and it's going to be permanent for us.
Volunteers with 3 engines, one purpose, keeping steam for the future. Like the town of Brigadoon, every so often they appear. The volunteers bringing the engines of Portland to view.